In this part of the series, we move beyond fixed reports and hard-coded logic. SAP COOIS data structures are not static. Fields change, layouts evolve, and system behavior adapts over time. The objective of Part 5 is simple but critical. To build SAP reporting automation that survives change. We will focus on designing VBA and SAP GUI scripting logic that does not depend on fragile column positions or fixed layouts. Instead, we'll detect structure dynamically, validate fields at runtime, and adapt automatically when SAP introduces changes without breaking the report. You'll see how to identify structural shifts, handle missing or newly added fields, and protect your automation from silent data corruption. By the end of this part, the goal is not just automation. It's resilient, future-proof SAP reporting that continues to work even when the system evolves. This is where SAP automation matures from scripts into solutions. Before we build anything new, we need to understand what actually changed. In Part 4, our automation worked perfectly. The logic was correct, the data was clean, and the exception model was reliable. But today, the same report shows fewer rows, different behavior, and a changed structure even though we didn't change our code. This is not a mistake. And it's not a failure of automation. This is how SAP systems evolve. SAP regularly adjusts report layouts, internal joins, and default selection logic, especially in transactions like COOIS and COOIS SPI. Sometimes columns move. Sometimes fields disappear. Sometimes new technical fields are added silently. When automation relies on fixed column positions or assumed layouts, it becomes fragile. The data looks correct but the meaning has shifted. That's exactly what happened here. Our logic didn't break, the structure underneath it changed. And this is why Part 5 exists. From this point onward, we stop writing automation that assumes stability. And start designing automation that detects change and adapts to it. Now that we understand why SAP automation can break, let's look at what actually changes inside COOIS and COOIS SPI. When users say, the report looks different, they usually focus on row counts or missing records. But the real changes happen deeper. In structure, not volume. In transactions like COOIS and COOIS SPI, SAP can change the order of fields, the availability of technical columns, the default joins behind the report, and even the meaning of an existing field, without changing the screen layout dramatically. For example, a column that once represented confirmation level data may now behave like an aggregated value. Or a field that was always present may no longer be populated under certain selections. From the user's perspective, the report still runs. But from an automation perspective, the structure has shifted. This is why automation that relies on fixed column numbers, hard-coded offsets, or assumed field positions becomes unreliable. The correct approach is not to chase row counts, but to detect structure programmatically. In the next section, we'll see how to identify stable anchors in SAP reports, fields and entities that remain reliable even when layouts evolve, and how to build VBA and GUI scripting logic around them. When SAP report structures change, not everything becomes unreliable. Some elements in SAP remain stable. Not because the layout stays the same, but because the business meaning does. In COOI and COOI SPI, the most reliable anchors are not confirmations or row counts. They are business entities, order headers, operations, and components. An order header represents a real business object. It exists regardless of how many confirmations are posted, or how the report is filtered. Operations represent execution intent. They remain visible even when confirmations are incomplete or disappear. Components represent feasibility. If components do not exist, the order cannot be executed, no matter what the confirmation data shows. These entities change slowly, and their meaning does not shift when SAP adjusts report layouts. That is why robust automation must anchor its logic to these entities, not to volatile confirmation rows or temporary aggregations. Once automation is anchored correctly, changes in layout become manageable, and changes in data volume stop being a problem. In the next section, we will translate these anchors into concrete VBA and GUI scripting patterns, so the automation adapts automatically, even when SAP evolves. Now that we've identified stable anchors in SAP reports, the next step is to design automation that uses them correctly. Adaptive automation does not assume fixed layouts, fixed column numbers, or fixed report behavior. Instead, it follows three simple principles. First, it detects structure dynamically. Before processing any data, the automation checks which fields are present, where they are located, and whether their meaning is still valid. Second, it anchors logic to business entities, not screen positions. Order numbers, operation numbers, and component relationships remain reliable even when layouts change. And third, it validates meaning before acting. Automation must confirm that a field still represents what the logic expects, not just that the column exists. In Excel VBA, this means working with header detection, named fields, and defensive checks instead of hard-coded column indexes. In SAP GUI scripting, this means reading values by technical field identifiers and validating screen context, not relying on recorded click paths. When these principles are applied together, automation becomes resilient. SAP can change layouts. SAP can evolve reports. But the automation continues to function because it adapts instead of assuming. This is the difference between scripts that work temporarily and solutions that survive system evolution. Let's now apply these principles to a real COOI SPI scenario. At first glance, this report looks normal. It runs successfully. Rows are returned. Nothing appears broken. But earlier, this same report showed a very different structure and a much higher number of rows. Instead of asking where the rows went, our automation starts by asking a different question. What is the structure of this report right now? The first step is to identify which business entities are present. Order headers, confirmations, operations, and components. Next, the automation detects the relevant fields dynamically. Not by column number, but by header meaning. Once the structure is confirmed, The logic anchors itself to stable entities. Order headers establish identity. Operations establish execution state. Components establish feasibility. Only after these anchors are validated do we evaluate confirmations and quantities. This way, even though the report looks different today, the automation still produces the same business conclusions. No assumptions were made about layout. No dependency exists on row count. And no rework was required. This is adaptive automation in practice. Logic that continues to work even when SAP data evolves. What you just saw is not a bug in SAP reporting. It's a reminder that SAP data structures evolve over time. Fields change, lists shrink, plants get restricted, and logic shifts quietly. If your automation assumes yesterday's structure will exist tomorrow, it will fail. Robust SAP automation is not about hard-coding fields. It's about detecting patterns, validating signals, and adapting logic automatically. In the next section, we'll design automation that survives SAP changes, not breaks because of them.